Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SouthStar Battery Metals Live Corporate Update. This is Trevor Brucato with RB Milestone Group, the US-based investor relations firm. For those new to the story, SouthStar is focused on industrial minerals and battery metals for the clean energy revolution. They are currently advancing their Santa Cruz Graphite project in Brazil towards phase 1 production and is located in one of the premier battery metals jurisdictions in the world. SouthStar's second project is the BamaStar Graphite project, which is advancing towards PEA and is located in Alabama's Graphite Belt. SouthStar's shares are traded in the US on the OTCQB under the symbol STSBF and in Canada on the TSX Venture under the symbol STS. Joining us today is the company's president and CEO, Richard Pearce, who will be providing an overview of SouthStar's Brazil and Alabama projects, including recent achievements and upcoming milestones on a timeline basis. At the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for questions for management to address. If you are interested in asking a question and are logged into the Zoom app or web platform, you can submit your questions to us directly in the Q&A module. Please note this presentation is being recorded today, Thursday, December 14th, 2023, and will soon be made available on the company's website at southstarbatterymetals.com. Following today's event, we will be circulating a brief investor sentiment survey on SouthStar's strengths and weaknesses, as well as which operational milestone you're looking forward to the most. Your participation in that would be greatly appreciated, as it will help SouthStar better communicate to its stakeholders. Now for a quick disclaimer. Today's call may contain forward-looking statements that are subject to risks and uncertainties that may cause actual results, performance, or developments to differ materially from those contained in the statements and are not guarantees of future performance of the company. No assurance can be given that any of the events anticipated by the forward-looking statements will occur, or if they do occur, what benefits the company will obtain from them. Also, some risks and uncertainties may be out of the control of the company. SouthStar has a full disclaimer contained in their presentation, as you can see here, and also on their website. Lastly, RBMG is not a registered investment advisor or broker-dealer. For more information about us, please visit rbmilestone.com. And now it is my pleasure to introduce SouthStar's president and CEO, Richard Pearce. Richard, the stage is yours.
Thank you, my friend. Well, thanks everybody for participating today. I was just reflecting this morning on 2023 and the milestones we've been able to achieve, and pretty pleased overall with the effort and the outcomes, and really excited about 2024. So I'm assuming the majority of the participants already know a little bit about it, but for those who don't know, we'll run through the slide deck and really like to focus a lot more on kind of Q&A and just giving everybody an update on what we see happening, particularly around China's announcement and some of the other recent news. But overall, pretty exciting 2023, and we're shooting to have even a better year in 2024. So briefly, just run through the deck. So SouthStar is really focused on tier 1 jurisdictions with scalable assets at a time really when battery metals and critical metals are of the utmost importance. We are looking to be a fully integrated vertical production with graphite concentrates and upgraded material for CSPG that can be put into a variety of battery applications. We have a management team that has a proven record of taking projects from concept all the way through construction and operations. We've got 2 fantastic assets at Santa Cruz, which is in construction, and BamaStar, which is in development. The way we're approaching the construction is really a phased modular approach so that we can scale these things up quickly. Engineering's already done. If you want to add more capacity, we just copy paste the plant design. We've got some fantastic financial partners with us. Sprott has put together basically a $28 million streaming financing for Santa Cruz and the concentrate. We just recently were awarded a $3.2 million grant from the DoD for the BamaStar feasibility study. So they're basically going to pay for half of our study We're fully funded to production. The phase 1 facility can produce 13,000 tons is the capacity, although we're currently licensed for 5,000 tons. So in terms of the macro setup and the energy transition revolution, really, I think it's clear that we're not going back on that. It's a perfect storm for battery metals with exploding demand and constrained supply. Graphite is one of the most important elements in the EV supply chain. It's number 1 in terms of percent growth and number 2 in terms of total tonnages that have to happen over the next 10 years. So EV and stationary storage electrification really doesn't happen without graphite. And I think that's an important note in that lithium and some of the other battery metals have run a little bit ahead of graphite, but I think finally graphite is turning that page and will be able to take advantage of some pricing pressure. China is the dominant player. They provide about 65% of the global concentrate and about 100% of the downstream processing. The US is 100% dependent on graphite imports. Europe is almost 100% dependent on graphite imports. And for all the horrible things I think that the pandemic brought about, and one of the great things is I think it has highlighted the fact of the delicate situation of having a single source of manufacturing capabilities and the impacts that that can bring on a global scale. So I think there's lots of onshoring and nearshoring. There'll be a lot of building. Just around us in Alabama, there's about sorry about the noise. There's about 18 gigafactories in production. And I think within the market of critical metals, lithium certainly is well understood, and graphite has yet to be appreciated. So I think in terms of risk rewards, graphite's a fantastic place to be, particularly if you're moving into production. When we think about the products and the markets that we're looking at, think of graphite basically in 2 buckets. You got industrial applications, which is high strength steels refractories, friction products, lubricants, etc. And then you have the value add, which includes the lithium ion battery anode material. So that's the negative part of the battery. And we're looking at being able to provide a broad portfolio of products into a broad range of sectors so that we're not dependent on any one particular area. So when we look at the supply chain from upstream with the mining all the way to downstream with the EV production, SouthStar is really looking to focus on this area here. So we've got mining, the processing, and then the upgrading into cell manufacturing components. BamaStar is located in the most important battery manufacturing region in the US. So we've got about 18 different gigafactories located around us. When you look at the battery chemistry, we're agnostic towards battery design. So the 3 main designs in use today, the naming is really around the cathode chemistry, not as much on the anode because it's basically graphite. So you've got LFP, NMC, and NCA. And regardless of the chemistry, they all have graphite in the anode. And it is the largest by weight. It's the largest component of any battery pack out there. So again, electrification and the EV revolution doesn't happen without graphite. It's also important to really note that not all graphite is suitable for battery applications. So it's important to be able to test your material, upgrade your material, produce samples, and then show that it works over time in batteries. In terms of the imperatives, the supply chain, it really is a perfect storm. So we've got exponential increase in graphite demand. We're short about 6,000 tons of graphite by 2035. And regardless of whether that number's a little high or a little low, it's a staggering deficit when we're producing about 1.1 million, 1.2 million today. So if you think about this, that's about 100 average size mines that would need to be constructed. We're in the middle of constructing and finalizing our phase 1. We can scale that up to 50,000 tons without too much headache. We propose to do the same at BamaStar in the US. So again, we've got near-term production that can help be a solution to this shortfall. The average mine takes 10 to 14 years to basically go from discovery to production. BamaStar is a perfect example. We started in 2010, and we're basically finalizing construction at the end of 2023, first part of 2024. So there's a gap between when you can say, oh, I want more material, and when you can actually get more material. And at a time when really geopolitics is a highly relevant, important piece of the graphite story. So we've got tensions between the US and China. We've got outright war between Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Palestine. Again, I think geopolitics is important and increasingly becoming more important. Graphite is critical to the battery technology, defense applications. The DOE, the Department of Energy, classifies graphite as critical both in the short term and medium term. And really, these tensions are reordering the global commodity flow and supply chains. And I think that's a real opportunity for us. So at a time when provenance and security of supply is increasingly important as industries deglobalize, again, I think we're well situated to be able to take advantage of the current market setup. So while graphite is geologically abundant, you have to be able to produce it at competitive prices and put it into production quickly. So again, the US produces no graphite concentrate currently. They have no battery anode production. And there's basically 3 graphite projects in the entire US, 2 in the contiguous US. The EU produces less than 1% of the graphite con and none of the battery anode material. And again, the midstream and downstream processing of graphite concentrates is critical to success. So when you look out across the world today, again, graphite is the China is the #1 producer of graphite, and Brazil has the largest reserves out there. So again, we're proposing to go phase 1, 5,000, phase 2, 25,000, phase 3, 50,000. And here's kind of the timing on that. There is an opportunity to skip phase 2 and go straight to phase 3. We have submitted all of our license and permitting documents, so we should have that resolved in the next month or so. Again, I think we'll be permits in hand early next year at the latest. Again, it's a fantastic, stable jurisdiction that's been producing graphite for 80+ years. We're on strike from other operating mines. It's a very simple, proven flow sheet. No tailings dam, filtered tails, which will be co-disposed in the waste dump. We've got a very large land package. We actually have over 19,000 hectares that have been pegged now, and we're really planning on about 3% of our overall land package. Again, it's very simple, open pit mining, no drilling and blasting. We've got amazing infrastructure. We're 1.3 kilometers off a multi-lane paved federal highway. We're a day's drive to 2 of the major container port facilities. We're getting hooked up to a clean hydroelectric grid. We can get basically to all the major industrial centers within Brazil within a day's drive. And again, Brazil is different than most of the other jurisdictions out there in that it has a large internal demand for graphite. So we can actually sell into Brazil, or we can export to external markets. We've got extremely low capital intensity because all our equipment here is actually manufactured in Brazil. Just briefly run through BamaStar. Again, it's located here in the middle of Alabama. Again, we're proposing to develop in phases, phase 1, phase 2. The value add plant will be located somewhere in this southeast corridor. We're looking at Louisiana, Alabama, Nashville, and Georgia. And really, this is a trade-off between logistics, supply chain, source of energy. Is it hydroelectric? Is it coal? Is it, what's the source of that energy? And then compare that to proximity to clients. So we'll be working through that trade-off study in our upcoming PEA. It's also important to note that the PEA will be this portion, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, going all the way up to 50,000 tons for Santa Cruz, going up to 50,000 tons for BamaStar, and ultimately getting to 60 or 70,000 tons of the value add. So when we talk about the PEA, which we put out in March of next year, it's a transformative study for us, and that will be going from Santa Cruz phase 1, phase 2 with an $81 million NPV 5 to a much larger project with 2 mines producing 50,000 tons of con each, and then a value add plant that's producing 60 or 70,000 tons of con. And again, we were very fortunate and grateful for the opportunity to work with the Department of Defense. They're going to pay for half of our feasibility study to move this forward quickly. Again, it's a historic graphite mine that was producing back in the 20s. It's the same exact flow sheet that we're using in Brazil. No tailings dam, phase modular approach, again, open pit, at surface mineralization. Same infrastructure advantage that we have in Brazil, we have here. And one of the unique things about this is we have private property and private mining claims. And again, based on our initial consults, we can permit this basically at the state level, which again will allow us to get this permitted in a fairly reasonable amount of time. And then there's ample opportunities for federal funding, both from the DOE, Department of Energy, as well as the Department of Defense, which we've been lucky enough to secure. So again, this is the strategic vision over the next 5 to 7 years that we want to put in place and into production. A little bit about our cap table: 42 million shares outstanding, 76 million shares fully diluted. Insiders own about 10%. Institutions own about 33%. Single family offices and retail owns about 57%. So in terms of the value proposition and the investment thesis, again, we've got an execution-driven management team with a proven track record. We're well aligned with shareholders. This will be the first new graphite production in the Americas really since '96. So we'll be one of the first movers to bring new production to the markets. We've got a diversified, scalable portfolio of projects in Santa Cruz and BamaStar. It's a perfect storm in terms of timing with supply and demand at a time when provenance and security of supply are important to diversify supply chains as well as impacting product pricing. So again, I think if you think about SouthStar, it's mispriced and misunderstood in a similar way that graphite is. So if you just look at, say, phase 1 of Santa Cruz and ran that out for 20 years, so, run it initially at 5,000 tons, step up to 13,000 tons, run that for 20 years, that alone gives us an NPV8 of around $42 million US. No additional CapEx, no nothing. We just start producing to our nameplate capacity. Then if you look at our EV currently, we have about 5.5 million US in the bank. Our current market cap is around, let's say 30 million Canadian, so around, 27 US, let's say. So our EV is basically 22 million US, and our NPV8 on just phase 1, we do nothing else, is around 42. So it's basically a half price opportunity. And you get phase 2 and phase 3 at Santa Cruz. You get Alabama and the value add as a cherry on top. So again, I think overall the graphite markets are misunderstood, and that's going to be modified quickly, particularly after this recent announcement from China with regards to licensing requirements. So we've got a lot of fantastic catalysts coming up to drive interest and share price. So we'll have the commissioning start of production coming up. Again, we've got 13,000 tons of installed capacity. If we ran our current facility at 24 hours, 7 days a week, again, we'd be able to produce around 13,000 tons. So the Lassonde curve suggests a significant re-rating when you move from development into actual production. And again, we've got another push in that, we were initially conceiving just 5,000 tons, but because we bought the minimum size equipment that was off the shelf, we have some capacity here that we can actually bring to the table quicker. We'll be looking to upsize our resources and reserves that we can then feed into a feasibility study. We should be getting our environmental permitting and our mining permits for phases 1, 2, and 3 very shortly. We have several agreements that are ongoing. As soon as we deliver 1 ton, 2 ton, 5 ton industrial samples so they can run a full test on them, we expect we'll have offtakes very shortly. And again, we'll be looking to put out that NI 43-101 feasibility study at the end of next year. And basically we'll be upsizing our resource reserves, incorporating that phase 3 production into it, and then bringing that to the to the strategic plan. In Alabama, again, fantastic opportunities here for Catalyst. The PEA will be put out in March next year. We're working on the preliminary environmental characterization, which again will be Q1 of next year, and doing ongoing value add and battery testing. So we're taking our concentrate, we're working through the characterization and testing it for a variety of different battery applications. So again, I think it's a fantastic opportunity, near-term production, two very good projects in tier 1 jurisdictions, first quartile OpEx, low capital intensity, robust economics at a time when the world is going to be in a deficit of graphite material and the team to deliver on it. So again, I want to thank all our current shareholders for their continued support and kind words over this previous year. And we look forward to a very exciting 2024. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Richard. As mentioned, we will now move to Q&A. If you have a question, you can submit them directly in the Q&A module. If we do not get to all of your questions today, we'll do our best to address them via email in a timely manner. Some questions have already come through, so let's kick off here. Organizing some of these, it is the categories around, cash position, need for capital moving forward to de-risk operations and so on. Top of mind here, just given the recent announcement on the capital raise, can you provide some color on that and including the use of proceeds?
Sure. So we announced a 5 million Canadian placement this morning. Again, it's basically at a slight discount to market. There is no unit, so there's no warrants associated with it. So compared to our previous private placement, which was done at 53 cents with a full warrant, this is a 72-cent share price. Again, no warrant associated with it. Use of proceeds is really, the majority of it is focused on moving these studies forward quickly. So at Santa Cruz, we want to get going on the drilling quickly. We want to move forward on the resource and reserve expansion and moving towards the feasibility study. At Alabama, we want to really accelerate the PEA and moving that forward quickly, which will include the preliminary environmental characterizations and licensing consultations, and then a variety of different battery tests. So we're actually, for Santa Cruz, for example, which we've already done the initial characterization, we will be working through the design of the actual battery. So we will be working on, let's say, optimization of the battery design and really looking to test those in a variety of different formats, including cylindricals as well as pouch cells. And at Alabama, we'll basically be doing the initial characterization that then we can incorporate into the PEA. So use of proceeds is really mostly around accelerating these studies and then some working capital requirements. So that's kind of how we came up with that number. When we look at our cap table, and let me flip up here quickly. Again, we'll have a slug of warrants that are coming due in February. We'll have a few options due in May, and another slug of warrants basically due in October. So when we look at those possible events, that amounts to approximately $7.3 million Canadian that could come in through exercise. That'll obviously clean up our cap table a little bit and provide some opportunities there. So we look to make sure we're moving these catalysts forward to move the share price up so that investors can feel comfortable exercising their warrants and options. We'll get that money in and put it to good work.
And I do notice that the warrants, you're saying $1.06. I believe that is the average. The warrants that Richard is alluding to in February and in October, those two larger chunks are at an exercise price of 75 cents. So essentially at market today.
Correct. Yep.
Any other sources of capital, perhaps non-dilutive? Perhaps, you can elaborate a little bit more on the DoD or the Department of Defense grant, how that's going to help you guys out from a non-dilutive perspective, as well as, any other opportunities to work with them, continue the relationship, as well as any other sources, DOE and so on.
Yeah. So, again, very fortunate and blessed to get that grant. Team worked really hard on putting that all together. That's the equivalent of basically, at current shares, it's the equivalent of 10 or 12 cents for free of money to help move the feasibility study forward. And again, that's the strategic 5 to 7 year plan that we'd be moving forward. So that was basically $3.2 million grant that the U.S. government is providing us to move the project quickly into production, ideally. And so we aim to be moving that as quickly as possible. There are other programs that we are currently applying for. The DOE just recently announced some grant opportunities. We are working with the DFC for some equity as well as some possible loan financing for Brazil. And we are talking with several development banks around providing some additional loan capacity if needed. We have a fantastic partner in Sprott. Again, they basically provide us $18 million, up to $18 million for our phase 2 construction. It's our election. So again, I think we've got a lot of excellent opportunities for non-dilutive capital to move these things into a much larger scale and accelerate the study. So I think particularly, at this time when Canada just announced $1.5 billion in funding for critical metals and infrastructure, Europe is considering a variety of measures. The important thing is that we're able to bring the first new production to the market and get that into commercial relationships that ideally become long-term relationships for us over time. So again, I think it's a fantastic opportunity to move this stuff into production quickly, develop those all-important commercial relationships, and scale as our clients ask us to. And there's just lots of interesting alternatives out there for non-dilutive financing. And I don't, having started looking at this in 2010, I don't remember another time where there was this amount of interest or opportunities out there. So again, I think it's a fantastic time for us.
Richard, perfect transition. We're on the slide right now with the Lassonde curve and seeing you guys at the bottom there working your way up. Maybe you can talk about, the other players in the space and generally speaking, near-term producers and where you guys are placed in that regard. Sure.
I think in general, let's talk about ex-China. Who produces today ex-China? So you've got a couple companies in Madagascar. NextSource is just bringing production online. You've got Mata Graphite. You've got Tirapati. So a couple producers in Madagascar. You've got Syrah, which is obviously a very large producer coming out of Mozambique. You've got LDI from Northern Graphite in Quebec. You've got Nacional de Graphite, which is in Brazil. And then you have ourselves. So when you look at who can bring additional capacity to the markets, those are the players today that can scale up if that's possible. So again, I think when you look out across the space and think we're 6 million tons short in the next few years, that's a significant challenge to bring. And so I think the first movers will have a significant advantage to that. And as we look at ourselves compared to the others in the universe, we're obviously very, let's say our market cap is significantly lower than some of the other players, even though we're bringing a very similar production profile to the table. And the PEA will be that coming out party. And I think it's one of those things that we'll have production, we'll have clients, we can sit down and talk with anybody who wants to take a look at our project. It's at commercial scale, and be able to have a moment where we have a transformative event that moves us from where we are today to something closer to where some of our competitors are, which is 200 plus, 150 $250 million or in excess of there. So again, I think we're one of the few companies that has near-term production, and in terms of risk reward, there's just not a lot of other similar sorts of profiles out there. So we're super excited about it. Again, the executive team is very well aligned with shareholders, and we're pushing as hard as we can possibly do to get the story out there, increase awareness, and keep moving the share price up as we deliver milestones.
And it speaks to the, one of the reasons why you spoke with Reuters shortly after China's announcement in October around the requirement of export permits on graphite for national security reasons. So, there is a bigger opportunity here for companies that are entering into production that are, not working essentially with China. So it seems like you guys are in an advantageous situation.
I think so. And I think the other thing is that really with defense applications and provenance of supply really being an important question around the geopolitics currently, which again, 5 years ago, we didn't have the same sort of concerns out there today. And then obviously, I think some of the relationships with the US and China, it's kind of a tit for tat sort of relationship there. So, if the US restricts certain types of chips, I think that was a real shot across the bow in the sense that, China has their capabilities, US has their capabilities, Europe has their capabilities. I think it's much better to cooperate and find solutions. But the fact of the matter is, China is in a dominant global position. And outside of China, there is no real significant production of upgraded anode material for a variety of applications, from your watch to your computer to others. So again, I think the US, Europe, Canada, and others are moving quickly to provide some diversified supply chain alternatives. And again, I think SouthStar is in a real advantageous position to be part of that solution.
Thank you, Richard. So at your Santa Cruz mine in Brazil, you mentioned there's an opportunity to potentially skip phase 2 and go right into phase 3. So in other words, 5,000 tons in phase 1, right into phase 3, producing 50,000 tons. Can you elaborate on this a little bit?
Sure. So again, everything is modular. So this is, phase 3 is nothing other than phase 2 copied and pasted. So the idea here was that we would install basically all the infrastructure for phase 3 and phase 2. So there's a real opportunity to say, if a client came to us and said, we would like to sign a offtake, we would want to go all the way to 50,000 tons as quickly as possible. We're in an ideal situation. So we'll be bringing basically 13,000 tons of production online here. We can scale that up fairly quickly. And the idea behind the phase 1 plant is that we really learn what works well, what maybe didn't work so well, get our guys used to really understanding our ore body and how it varies, across the strike as well as at depth, get our feet underneath us, take those lessons learned, incorporate that into the feasibility study, which will be done at the end of next year, so that we can take real world examples with our ore and processing our ore into high grade concentrate, and then also upgrading that material. So the idea is that if we want to add more, we just do the same module twice, and then we'd have the infrastructure there that would be able to support that. So again, I think we could stand that up in a much quicker timetable if a client came along, and particularly it would be a lot easier if they would say, let's do a binding offtake, and we can borrow their balance sheet to help us get that financed. And it's the same thing in Alabama. If somebody came along and said, we would like to skip phase 1 and go straight to phase 2, not a problem, because the idea is that this plant in Brazil is a very similar design to the plant in Alabama, so that we can take this engineering, this expertise, the know-how around an operating mine, transfer it very quickly to Alabama, where there is no producing mines in the US period, and scale those things up quickly. The engineering is done, the equipment is all the same. It makes our supply chain that much easier, and our operations and maintenance programs, again, that much easier.
I am seeing a good amount of questions come in here, so we'll try to wrap this up by answering all of these and asking all of these. So the permitting aspect for Santa Cruz, if you can elaborate on what you guys have accomplished and received thus far, and what you guys are still waiting on, and then perhaps you can then go into a little bit more detail on same thing but for BamaStar.
Sure. So what we have permitted and licensed today is phase 1, 5,000 tons. And what we have submitted to both the environmental permit as well as the mining license is phase 1 plus phase 2 plus phase 3. So we would be able to step up production to 50,000 tons with that permitting being approved. So the minute we basically get these licenses approved to 50,000 tons, we can start producing and selling 13,000 tons, which will basically be our nameplate capacity in the phase 1 plant. Then we would build phase 2 and 3. We'd look at our feasibility study at the end of next year, make an investment decision on that. Sprott has provided up to $18 million of stream financing for us on that build, and move it as quickly forward as possible. The BamaStar project is basically private mining claims and private property. So our initial consultations are that as long as we stay out of the wetlands and we step into this production, we could permit this entire thing at the state level, which again would be significantly less time, let's say 18 to 24 months to stand this thing up and get it permitted and licensed and built, compared to much longer if we had to go through a full 404. The value add plant, we are looking at placing, constructing this in known industrial parks, meaning that already have all the infrastructure, the water, the logistics, power, et cetera, is already in place. So what we're actually standing up is the plant itself and the processes associated with the plant. So again, I think we can get that permitted license in a very reasonable amount of time. So the idea is that once we have a plant design that is working for us, we don't have to go out and redo the engineering. We can copy paste this very quickly and move it forward.
How about contracts with buyers or off-takers?
Yeah, so like I said, we've got several different conversations ongoing. We've got several of those which all they're waiting for is us to be able to deliver 1 ton to 5 ton industrial samples so they can do their final test. So they've tested at the kilo levels, all looks good, and basically they're looking to do this final large-scale industrial sample test, and then they'll be ready to sign off-take. So again, once we basically put tons on the ground and get that into their hands, the tests are pretty quick, and then again, we're looking to sign some off-takes on the back of those. So again, I think early part of next year, we should be having commercial contracts that we're signing in place as we're putting tons into the warehouse.
Any challenges that you see on one project and or the other, even worst case scenario?
Yeah, the challenges are all around us. We're working hard every day. You get whatever, a mill gets delivered late or part gets delivered late, the wrong part gets delivered. It's the same thing, just on a different day. So challenges abound, and we've got a fantastic team in place to work our way through it. Work as a team, and figure them out and keep things moving forward. So, that's the beauty of having an executive management team that has already beat their head against the wall a dozen times building mines, because inevitably something happens. It's just inherent in the construction. You think you understand the foundation conditions, something changes. You think the weather is going to cooperate, and you get a hurricane that blows, stuff over. I'm not saying that's the case here. I'm just saying construction is always a challenge, and there's always things that come up that are just impossible to plan on. And you have to have a great team around you that's been there and done that, a good network of service providers, a good network of contractors. So, I think that's really one of the huge advantages that we bring to the table, is that we've built and operated several mines throughout the Americas. And that is worth its weight in gold, because you understand that these things are going to happen, and you understand, and over time you learn how to deal with them. So, I think building mines and operating mines is a challenging experience, and that's one of the greatest things I like about it. Is I like that's something that I really enjoy, and I enjoy the opportunity to work with great professionals and find those solutions. So it's the engineer in me that just likes to figure out a problem and figure out a solution and move it forward. But I think when you look around, you always are working on, well, what are the things that I can control and that I have some input on, and what are the things that I don't control? And you focus on the things really that you control and have input on. So, pricing is always a challenge. We had, good pricing through December of last year, January of this year. And then it's been a slow, steady decline over the year until last month. And, I think between a combination of supply and demand plus China's announcement, really November was the first time in 2023 where the pricing went up as opposed to went down. Again, that bodes well, but there's obviously some seasonal variation there. But, it's one of those things that where you've got good projects, you're in the first quartile of OPEX, so you're competitive with global production regardless of where it is. You put a good team around you and you keep moving things forward. And that's really our approach and our advantage. And you start small and you scale up as the market's required, as your clients help you finance these things. So I think, markets are challenging, construction is challenging, production is challenging, pricing is always challenging, et cetera. But when you get right down to it, the commercial side of it is as simple as this. If you have a reasonable OPEX, a reasonable capital intensity, to be successful, literally all you have to do is deliver spec material as promised, because that's more than, let's say, 7/8 of all the other of a lot of the other suppliers out there. So our goal is to be very focused on clients. Literally, all we want to do is deliver spec material at reasonable prices and make sure that our clients are happy. And that's kind of how we're approaching this.
I mean, you and the rest of the team, a strong background in exploration, development, and production. But maybe you could talk about, key partners that you envision here might be helpful in expediting the process, if anything, if any, and if need be.
Well, again, I think it starts with the team on the ground. Nobody does anything big on their own. And that's where, again, we're very blessed to have a fantastic group of folks here that we've been working with for many years. We've got a good network of suppliers throughout the globe, but certainly in the Americas. When you look at our financial partners, again, Sprott has been a fantastic partner. The institutions that have invested in us and have taken that leap of faith on the team have been fantastic and continue to be fantastic partners. So again, when we look out across what we're doing, again, blessed in the sense of where we're located. I'm in one of the most beautiful spots in Brazil, in a fantastic municipality, got a very supportive mayor and the group that's around him. Again, Bahia is a fantastic state to be located in. Cruza County It's been a fantastic, supportive county for us. The state of Alabama couldn't be more supportive. So again, I think when we look at our projects and where they're located and the possibility of scaling these into operations, most of the stakeholders want how many jobs you're going to create, how much taxes are you going to pay, make sure you do it in a safe, environmentally responsible manner, and get that production to the marketplace. And again, that's where I think having an experienced team that's been there and done that is so key to that. So there's nothing but partnerships, I suppose is the best way to look at it. If you want to be successful in this, you have to be successful in the people part of it and the partnership part of it, because again, there is no upgraded production really outside of China. So we need to do this in a partnership fashion. We need to be working with our stakeholders, working with our financial partners, working with our technical partners to move these things forward quickly. It's a race.
Thank you. Makes sense. Thank you, Richard. We're coming up on time here, so I'll go through a few more questions that we have. High level, thoughts on uplisting to a major exchange in the U.S. Analyst coverage. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think analyst coverage will come with a market cap. I think as we approach kind of $75 million market cap, $100 million Canadian market cap, that's where I think we'll be able to get analyst coverage. Again, that we're just talking generalities here, but if you think about, okay, if I got a $2 a share price, I remember when we were a $3 million market cap company, and that was not that long ago. It's 2018. By the end of this year, we're basically whatever, maybe a $33, $34, $35 million market cap company. So we would certainly be open to the idea of uplisting to a major exchange in the US, so we could start having conversations with those major institutions that today really can't play on the penny stocks. So again, our goal would be, maybe middle of next year, we start looking at that opportunity, and thinking about uplisting. We meet all the technical requirements. The only thing we don't have today is the minimum share price, which is either $2 or $3, depending on the exchange we want to be looking at. But again, I think as we put out this PEA, which is presenting this strategic plan, that is $1 billion plus revenue market cap company. So again, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for us to get re-rated. And that, is that happen in March. And then we move forward straight into the feasibility study, and we're going as fast as we can possibly go on delivering these milestones. So again, I think it's a matter of time. And again, I think compared to a lot of our competitors, where graphite is misunderstood, certainly compared to lithium. As an aside, I basically put the top 40 largest graphite companies together by market cap and compared that to the top 10 market cap lithium companies. And if you looked at that comparison, the top 40 graphite companies don't equal the 10th largest lithium company by market cap, and they're nowhere near production. So again, I just think that's indicative of the misunderstanding, because you don't have a battery without an anode, and we don't have EVs without a battery. So, basically today, when you buy an EV, particularly in the US, you buy a battery and you get the car for free. And GM, Ford, and a lot of these companies lose money on the EVs that they're selling. They're obviously bringing their costs down, getting better at it, et cetera. But when you look at that dynamic, you say, well, how can that be? Is it, I don't know how many times I've had an investor say, are you telling me that the OEMs don't have their supply chain figured out? And my response is always the same. Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. They don't have their supply chain figured out. Why would we be short 6 million tons of graphite if we had our supply chain figured out? We don't have it figured out. And really, when a lot of these gigafactories start coming online at the end of 25 and the first part of 26, and they all start missing their earnings estimate, is really when there's going to be that eureka moment, and they figure out, yeah, we don't have our supply chain figured out. So again, we'll have production, we'll have scalable assets, and that's really where we look to be part of the solution.
Sure, I know that you can't predict the future here, and you're talking about this production continuing onward and ramping up, scaling up. The natural question, along with the production level, is the potential sell price. The selling price of flotation concentrate or SPG. If you can talk about that a little bit, from a high level standpoint, that'd be great.
Sure. So for perspective, let's go back to our PFS. Again, that was Santa Cruz phase 1, phase 2. At that time, when we look at the basket of what we would produce of graphite concentrate, it was $12.87. Then if you look at today's pricing, or actually let's say that at the end of December of last year, so end of 2022, that same basket was about $14.50. So it had increased significantly since 2019 to the end of 2022. We went from $12.85 basically to $14.50. Today, let's say through the end of October, we were back to about a $12.50 basket price, which was basically at 5-year lows on the graphite concentrate price. And November was the first time it bumped about 3%. November was the first time where the pricing moved back up. So, what do I see in the future? I think in the short term, China's announcement will significantly impact price, which we won't see for 30, 60 days. So that basically went into effect in December 1st. I don't think China will export hardly anything for 60 to 90 days while they're working through that bureaucratic process. They even said that they hadn't received any export license request. So again, I look at gallium and germanium as an example of what potential impacts, and we studied that. So if you look at the price of what happened with germanium, when the announcement came out, there was a quick bump. The exact same thing happened with graphite. There was a quick bump and then dropped. But when you look at the actual impacts from exports, basically China was exporting about 60% of what they were exporting prior to the licensing requirements. And graphite is 100 times bigger in terms of volume and importance for EV space and battery transition compared to germanium and gallium, which basically chips more than anything. So again, when you think about that, you're just like, well, in the short term, bunches of companies and countries are going to be putting together a strategic stockpile. Previously companies maybe had a month's worth of stockpile. Now maybe they have 2 or 3 months. They were trying to stockpile prior to the actual requirement. And I think that's in the short term, maybe through March, April next year, we're going to see significant pricing pressure as companies are trying to figure out what this all means and stockpiling so they have more flexibility in their operations. Longer term, we don't really know what it means. We'll know when we know. Are they going to cut exports? Are they not? I suspect, if it again is similar to germanium and gallium, their exports will fall significantly compared to what the pre-licensing requirements were. So again, I think we're going to kind of split into almost 2 pricing paradigms. You'll have China and the internal demand around graphite, and I think that'll go as internal demand for EVs go in China, so will go the graphite pricing. They have enough material today to be able to supply themselves, so that will likely be the situation. Ex-China, we just don't have the capability to bring the tonnages to the market if all these gigafactories come online, and that's where I think the opportunity is for companies like SouthStar that can bring production quickly. So I think ex-China will see quite quicker disconnect between supply and demand and the resulting pricing pressure, which will drive it up. And on top of that, I think you'll see a lot of the industrial applications, which are trying to figure out the dynamic, and they'll also start stockpiling material. So I think we'll see significantly pricing pressure through most of 24. And basically that's when the imbalance between supply and demand is predicted to start really impacting as a lot of these gigafactories come online in 25 and 26. So this is kind of like a bridge that's providing pricing pressure. And again, I think we understand sometimes the Chinese flood the markets to disincentivize investment. And I don't put that past them. So again, I think SouthStar is well positioned with a reasonable amount of material that we have to place into the market at first quartile cost, and we can scale as the markets dictate.
Perfect. Appreciate that, Richard. Very informative. And just to end off, if you can just reiterate the upcoming milestones so investors can keep track of, that would be great.
Yeah, so I mean, think about catalysts, think about Santa Cruz, start of production, scaling up to 13,000 tons. We'll be drilling in the first half of the year, expanding our resource and reserves and incorporate that into our feasibility study. We should get our phase 2 and 3 licenses in hand early part of next year. Signing commercial arrangements. So again, this is unbelievable catalyst for us as we start the year. At BamaStar, again, this will be a transformative event for us as we put this PEA out in March. Again, that's on 2 mines producing, combined 100,000 tons of concentrate or thereabouts. And that'll be, significantly larger numbers than what we have today to talk about. Preliminary environmental characterizations and the licensing around that, and ongoing battery optimization, characterization, testing, et cetera. So lots of important milestones that create significant value for shareholders. Good news flow with lots of stuff coming out. We basically have looked at the next 18 months and the news flow that we would expect around that, and pretty excited about those opportunities and those catalysts.
Thanks, Richard. And thanks everyone for joining today's event. Again, SouthStar trades in the US under the symbol STSBF and in Canada under the symbol STS. Today's webinar recording will be sent to all registrants, attendees, and so on, and will also be made available on the company's website at southstarbatterymetals.com. If you have any additional questions that have not been addressed today, please email us at invest@southstarbatterymetals.com. Again, that's invest@southstarbatterymetals.com. Thanks again. That concludes our webinar. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Trevor. And I appreciate the opportunity. And again, want to thank all of our existing shareholders. Wishing everybody a happy holiday season, and really excited about what we have coming up this next year. Please feel free to reach out via LinkedIn or via email. Additional questions we're happy to answer. We get back to you as quickly as we possibly can. But again, thanks to our existing shareholders and interested parties, and look forward to a really exciting 2024.
Thanks, Richard.